From the C Squared Studios, this is WedCast, part of the C Squared Radio Podcast Network. Here is your host, Mike Carroll.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of WedCast, coming to you from the C Squared Studios, which used to be my garage. Now it's my office. I'm not sure if we're moving up or what, but we're definitely moving inside, and we've got a great episode for you today. We've got David Cutler with Your Perfect Ceremony. And when I started the podcast, I was really looking forward to having an officiant on for a couple reasons. Number one, they're the first focal point of the event. They are the ones that preside over the ceremony. They are the MC for the ceremony. They set the tone, they set the mood, but also because at the core of it, their job is very similar to what mine as a DJ/MC is involved. Now, they're not playing music or anything like that, but they're using their voice and their words to create a tone and atmosphere. And that's a lot of what we're going to explore with David. A lot has happened since last week's episode. You know, I told you that last week's episode was the third episode. It was the episode that everybody said, okay, once you've got the third one in the bank, then go ahead and start submitting it. And we did. We submitted it to, well, just about anywhere. Anywhere that had a podcast submission form. We filled it out and we sent it, and we are now on Spotify. A bunch of others that no one's ever heard of yet. But the big one is iTunes. We are on iTunes, which is funny because everybody said, you know, it could take a while for you to get onto iTunes, and it took a day. And we got that notification that, hey, you've been approved, and we're up there, and we've got a review so far. So we're, well, not a review, but someone left us 5 stars. So you're going to be hearing that now. I'm not going to do it too much. We'll do it, you know, once in passing in the intro, and then once at the outro. But again, you know, if you listen to us on Spotify or iTunes or really wherever, there's probably going to be an area where you can leave a thumbs up, a like, or if you really like it and you want to hear more and more, click that subscribe button. All of those get tabulated and tracked. And like I said last episode, I'm probably not going to monetize this. You never know, but right now that's not my goal. I'm having fun with this, and that's the main thing. But if I have a lot of listeners and subscribers and stats, I can go to bigger guests and bring you guys guests that I know you'd really enjoy hearing from and that I'd really enjoy talking to. So that's why if you're listening to us on iTunes or wherever, you know, click that subscribe button, leave us a comment, a thumbs up, 5-star review. Also, I've never mentioned this in the podcast, but we also do upload them to YouTube. It's not a video, so it's just we just have the banner up there and then the audio playing through there. And if you're listening to us on YouTube, you know, leave us a comment. I know for a fact you can leave us a comment in YouTube. So go ahead and do that for us. That would be great, and we will keep bringing you great guests and great content and telling great stories and having a good time. I've got a lot of things in the works coming up, and so we're going to be having a lot of fun as we go through. Today I wanted to talk about the role of an MC, and it's oftentimes thought interchangeable, DJ/MC. It's one and the same, and I always say, well, have you ever seen them at a party together? Sorry, that's a personal inside joke. But DJ and MC really, while often they are done by the same person, and I certainly am capable of handling both sides of it, oftentimes they're done by two separate individuals. There's companies out there that that's their whole sales point. Their advantage is we send out one person to manage the music and one person to be the MC, because the skills needed really are two different skill sets. And oftentimes they're interchangeable, but they're not always. And in talking with venues and coordinators, I always like to ask, have you ever had to do a grand entrance? And more often than not, they're like, yeah. You know, and they'll tell the story of the DJ showed up and just scared to death. You know, he handled the music perfectly, great on the transitions, great with the song selections, but it was just that microphone that he was afraid of. He didn't understand how to talk through it. Maybe he was nervous, or sometimes it's ego driven. DJ is just that's not my thing. And most coordinators and venues that I talk to have told me, oh yeah, at one point the DJ goes, so when are you going to announce the wedding party? No, that's your job. And it's more so than just making the announcements and doing things like that. That's kind of where the difference comes between MC and one of the words that often gets used is host. And technically, if you look through my website and different things, I'll call ourselves hosts. I'll call us MCs, DJs. I use a lot of different terms because we really handle more than just what a typical DJ or even a typical MC will do. Yes, we're going to announce the wedding party. We're going to get the names right, but we're going to do it in a way that creates a lot of fun, a lot of tone, a lot of atmosphere. We're going to sit down with you, and I'm saying we because I put it in context of me, my company, and the DJs that I work with. We're certainly not the only ones that do this. There are a lot of great MCs out there. I've learned from some of the best, and I've learned to kind of take what I see them do, what I saw, what I liked that they did, what I saw that got a reaction, and represent it in a way that's really unique to me. And so it's not that I'm better than them. I'm just different. That's what it comes down to. There really isn't a perfect DJ or a perfect MC. There's just the perfect one for you. I used to work for a company that had a lot of different DJs. And it just we do one wedding, and then we do another family member's wedding, and it would be a different DJ, and they talk, but no, my DJ was the best because they did this. My DJ was the best because they did that. And really what it is that couple got that connection with that DJ, and so that's why they're the best. And nothing anybody will tell them will change them of that, and that's a good thing. But a good wedding MC not only lets your guests know what's going on, but also narrates the story of the reception. And this is where we're getting into some of the differences between a host and an MC as it's taken. Now, the term MC stands for Master of Ceremonies. It sometimes is the guy in the mic, so to speak, but it's really different. If you've ever been to an event and the DJ is making an announcement and no one's paying attention, they don't really know what to do. Maybe they're not even listening. That can be a difference between a good MC and a great MC. A great MC is going to know how to command a crowd. Charisma is a funny thing, and you don't learn you don't learn it. You either have it or you don't, and you need a lot of charisma to be able to control 200, 300 people, because at best, and I tell this to my couples, a wedding reception can be a lot like herding cats. You've got this group over here by the bar. You've got this group over here enjoying the dessert station. You've got some people over there in the photo booth, and now you've got to tell them, hey, something really important is about to happen. And if you miss this, you're going to be upset with me for missing it. And you can't just go, all right, everybody, we're going to do this or we're going to do that. Well, you could, but it wouldn't be very effective. So you've got to be able to early on let them know, hey, I'm the mouthpiece, I'm the narrator for the night. What I say is important, and it's going to mean something to you. And I'm not only going to give you some great information, but I'm also going to make sure you have a lot of fun. And that boils down to essentially what a great MC does. They make it fun, they tell the story, and they make sure everyone has a good time. Now, it often is confused that an MC, and I've had brides tell me, I don't need an MC at a wedding. I don't need someone who's going to play a bunch of games or different things like that. And that's fine. I actually am not. I'm kind of a somewhat interactive MC, and an interactive MC is someone who's out there leading dances, teaching games, and different things like that. And I can do that. I've got that in my repertoire, but I'm more of a narrator, of I use the terminology storyteller, but I don't, even that seems like, oh, he's just going to be on the mic telling us things. No, there are times where you are on the mic, and then there are times where you just kind of let the music do the talking. But I was talking to a family once, and I say family because it was the bride's dad that was really the one that was most concerned with the DJ and the MC. He had this idea that an MC DJ was going to come out there and, do the hokey pokey or the chicken dance or things like that, and he didn't want that. And I let him know, that's fine. There are couples out there that love that. There are couples out there that hate that, and then there are couples that are in the middle. It's all about finding what you want and going from there. And after they booked me for their wedding and working with them, Dad and I were talking constantly. And, we get to the planning meeting, and they're in my office, and he goes, Mike, why do DJs do that? Why do they do the YMCA or the, I guess in modern parlance would be the cha-cha slide or the Cupid shuffle? And I told him, David, not David Cutler, who we're going to be talking to later. The dad's name was David. I said, David, not everybody loves to dance. I'll never forget the look he got. What do you mean? It was like I just, set my hair on fire. He couldn't believe that I was saying that. And I'm like, no, not everybody likes to dance, or more importantly, not everybody is going to come out by just playing a song. Some people need some coaxing. And he kind of sat back for a little bit, and he's like, I get it. Those DJs that I've seen that were doing that stuff, that might have been what the couple wanted. I said, yeah, maybe it was, or maybe it was a DJ that didn't listen to them what the couple wanted. But I give DJs the benefit of the doubt, and I say that they gave that couple what that couple wanted, and so he was impressed that I was able to kind of articulate the point of why they do that, and say, well, he then said, well, we don't want any of that. I'm like, that's fine. I can give you that. I've done receptions where I'm Mr. Interactive out there on the dance floor. I did one very, very conservative crowd, and I pulled out every trick in the book, and I had them for a good solid 45 minutes to an hour. And mind you, this is a bride and groom who said, if you get anybody up and dancing, we're thrilled. And I had them for a good 45 minutes to an hour, and then the reception ended, and I'm sitting in my chair, and the coordinator, who actually referred me to them, said, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect you to be able to get them dancing. She had never seen the interactive DJ. She came from this world of, DJs were club DJs who could talk on a microphone. She had never seen what an interactive DJ could do, and she was like, but don't do that every time. And no, it's time and place. Because for every game we've got, there are other things that we've got that are just as impactful that aren't games. And so if you're planning a wedding, write this tip down. If you learn one thing from this podcast, this is the thing that I want you to take away from. There is an event that done one of two ways, and either way will blow the roof off the reception site if it has a roof. And it's what I call the anniversary countdown. Now, sometimes it's called the longevity dance, the years married dance. It goes by a lot of different names. I call it the anniversary countdown. And it's done one of two ways. One way is you get everybody on the dance floor, and you pull them off based on how long they've been married. So you start off, okay, if you've been married for a year or more, step off the dance floor. If you've been married for 5 years, or 1 year or less, if you've been married for 5 years or less, step off the dance floor. And then you go to, you get into some big numbers, 35, 40, and what you're left with is the couple that's been married the longest dancing with the couple who's been married the shortest, the wedding couple, and the newlyweds in this instance. And you acknowledge that moment, and it gets a good reaction, and then you go on out to the dance floor and you ask the couple who's been married the longest, as the couple who's been married the longest, do you have any advice? Oh, and you always ask them how long they've been married. How long have you been married? 55, 65 years, they're proud of that. And that is an accomplishment. Do you have any advice to get our couple who's been married the shortest, the newlyweds, any advice? And the one of them will almost always say, do whatever your partner asks, or just remember these words, "I'm sorry, dear." And it's a cute, tender moment, and then you're back to the party. And I have done it that way before, and I've had people come up to me and say, "We really loved it when you did it at that wedding. Can you do it again?" And then, so that's one way to do the anniversary countdown. Then there's another way where you start off with an empty dance floor. And you start off with, if you've been married for 40 years or longer, come on out to the dance floor. And again, they're proud that, he's talking about us, dear. Let's go on out to the dance floor. We've been married that long. And then you build it, 30, 20, 10, 5. You get down to 1 year. And then, okay, if you've been married for 3 hours or more, and that gets a little bit of a chuckle from the guests, come on out to the dance floor. If you're here with a date, come on out to the dance floor. If you're single, come on out to the dance floor. Now you've got the dance floor packed. And I haven't done the electric slide, the Cupid shuffle, the chicken dance. I haven't done any of that. I have simply used my skill as an MC to pack the dance floor. Now we're off to the races. So a good MC can make the reception come to life. And if you have a crowd that loves to dance, a good MC knows when to turn it on and to turn it off. So he's going to sit back and mix the music to perfection. But if you've got a crowd that needs a little bit of that nudge, that's where he comes in and he shines, because he can get them dancing, and he's got a host of tricks that he has at his disposal. So there we go. That's our little bit of a story, a little bit of a lesson for the day. Now we're going to get into the interview. I worked with David. I don't even remember. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. I had known him from different networking events, so we knew each other, but I'd never worked with him. And we talk about it in the interview. The bride and her family was from Germany. And so he wrote a portion of the ceremony and performed it in German. It was great. And of course, he came to me and he's like, "Hey, we have a portion of the ceremony that's in German. We want to make sure that the mic is crystal clear." And so we worked on that. We had our lapels on the officiant and our lapels on the groom, and so that the vows and everything was just perfect. And it was magical, and you could just tell, like, even thinking about it now, gives me goosebumps. And if I'm having that, that visceral reaction right now, think of the guests the day of. And that little moment was all set because the couple hired themselves a great officiant. And there's some legalities, there's some technical legal format to the officiant as well. Some things that can actually be pretty substantial. Like, it's illegal for an officiant to do things a certain way, or if the marriage license isn't signed exactly correct, it could be rejected by the state. And if it's rejected by the state, that means that you have to get a new license, and you have to essentially get married again. I remember when we were my wife and I were getting married, we had a friend of ours who he had done weddings before. So he's also a fellow DJ, one of the DJs that trained me. So I had a good relationship with him. I knew he was going to do a great job in filling out the license under where it put title for the officiant. That's exactly what he put. He put officiant. Well, flash forward to we're in customs on our way back from our honeymoon, and I finally have cell service. So I pull my phone out, because I've been running a business for a while at this point, and I check my messages, and the first message was from the state of California saying that our license wasn't accepted. So I look at my wife, and we're here in customs getting back from our honeymoon. I'm like, "Babe, we're not married." And I called the guy from the state the very next day, and he explained the situation to me, and he was actually very nice, and he just crossed it out where he put officiant and wrote in reverend, and that was good. And so when you look at a copy of our marriage license, you can see where he crossed that out and put reverend. So there's a lot of technicalities to that. I'm not saying don't hire a friend to be the officiant, because a friend will give you that personal touch that an officiant can't necessarily 100% get, because they're personal, because they've got that personal connection with you. They're going to come really close, though. But there's a lot of the technical side that officiants know and they stay up to date with. And also, officiant can help you get your marriage license. And talking to David, he'll talk to you about how he also has premarital counseling that he offers. So a lot of great stuff. David Cutler with Your Perfect Ceremony. And let's go ahead and get the interview started. Well, I'm excited to have you on, David. Welcome to the show.
Mike, it's an honor to be on your show, man. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. Now, go ahead and take some time and introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell them who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it, and how you got into it.
Well, my name is David Cutler, and I am a wedding officiant, or wedding minister, or the guy that stands up there and makes you say, I do. I answer to all three of those. And so my job basically in the wedding business is to make it legal. My wife and I moved here to beautiful Temecula about a little over 10 years ago, and we've just settled in here, and it's been an absolute dream living in the area, especially in the business that I am in, as Temecula, as many of you know, is a pretty busy wedding destination. So it's kind of nice to be able to keep 70 to 80% of all my business right here in my backyard. Don't have to put a whole lot of miles on the family truckster, right?
Yeah.
Did my first wedding, honestly, just as a favor for a coworker of mine about 18 years ago. She had learned that I had a background in youth ministry several years before that, asked me if I'd ever done a wedding before. I said no. She said, would you be interested in doing your first wedding? My fiance and I are having a hard time finding somebody that we jive with, and you know us and we know you, and that would be kind of nice to have somebody who we have a personal connection with do our ceremony. And so that was my very first wedding. I remember it was a little bed and breakfast up in Julian, apple pie country. And I just remember being so incredibly nervous that day. But the moment that the bride and her dad turned that corner, and I saw the dress and I saw the emotion in her dad's face, something came over me. It was a calm that just, let me know that I was supposed to be there in that moment for her. And, gave it the old college try, delivered a ceremony that I guess went off really well, because 3 or 4 of our friends that were at the wedding said, you've got to be my officiant if I ever get engaged. And so that's what happened for about the next 10 years. I was just Dave, the friend who could marry you. And I probably married at least a dozen coworkers out of the restaurants that I worked at the time. And it wasn't until about 2012 that I got introduced to a company called Wedgwood Wedding and Banquet. And a friend of mine was bartending at a country club there, and he said, hey, you need to meet this lady, Julia. She's really awesome. They're looking for a package, officiant that they can put into their packages. And that was my introduction to the world of professional weddings, because beforehand I had no idea that I could make a living doing this. And so I got my start with Wedgwood Wedding and Banquets, did 24 weddings for them the first year, almost 50 weddings the year after that. And by that time, I had gotten on Yelp and Wedding Wire and The Knot and started collecting reviews, got a website put up, made some business cards, and all of a sudden I started to get inquiries from outside of Wedgwood. And so once it all balanced out to where I had enough people contacting me outside of Wedgwood, I was able to very graciously cut ties with them, go out 100% on my own. And that's how it's been for the last almost 6 years. And I've been very fortunate to be, one of the more popular names in the officiating business out here in the Temecula Valley. So that's the story. I hope I didn't miss anything.
I did not know you started at Wedgwood.
Professionally, yes. Yeah, that was the first wedding that I ever got paid for.
Which Wedgwood?
This was the Champions Club at the Retreat up there in South Corona, right off Dos Lagos.
It's now it's the one that's part of Glen Ivy.
Well, that's the funny thing is because one exit south of that is the Glen Ivy Country Club.
Oh, okay.
And
So it is a separate location.
they had me doing weddings there too.
Oh, okay.
Glen Ivy, because they were basically right next door, just one exit away from one another. So I did all of my weddings the first year at the Champions Club at the retreat there. And then the second year they put me on at Glen Ivy, and I was doing both locations the second year.
And for those who are listening who might not be in the local Southern California area, Wedgwood is a venue management company where their specialty is all-inclusive packages. So they have brides that come in and they basically can get their whole wedding mapped out by just saying yes. And so you were one of the officiants that were part of that package.
I was one of two names on the list, yes. And I think because I had a website and I had, a couple of reviews and I was able to do that, they mentioned to me through the management, they said, you are contacted probably 5 times more often than the other officiant is, and, contracted to be part of the packages. So I don't know. I must have did something right when I built my website because a lot of the brides said, we just liked what we saw, and that's what led us to reach out to you.
Now we're going to start off with the most pressing question, the hardest to tackle. I'm going to put you on the spot right away. The question I've been dying to know is how hard it is to learn German, and how much did you learn? Do you remember that ceremony that we did many years ago where the groom was from, I think he was from Michigan, but the bride was from Germany?
Yes, I do remember that. Oddly enough, I took a semester of German my freshman year of college. And I don't know why, because we live in Southern California and the default should be to take Spanish, but something like German. So I just remembered a little bit of German, and I remembered how to, pronounce some of the words and the accents and all the noises that you can make. So I just offered it to her. I said, hey, I can throw in a couple of phrases in German if you want. And her eyes lit up and she said, really? I said, sure, why not? I'm adaptable. So Google Translate was my friend. I went online and I typed it in English, spits it out in German, and then I just practiced it over and over again until it sounded halfway decent, and then I ran with it.
And one of the things that I like working with you most is, and we'll talk about this, is you've got a good handle of the technical side of it as far as miking and everything like that. But your ceremonies they're individually tailored, but they're not, there's some officiants where they are reading their life story, and that's fine to a certain extent. But I think there's a point where guests are going there. All right, yeah, we got it. Whereas your ceremonies are sentimental, a little bit of humor, but very succinct and to the point, and moves all along. And that's one of the reasons that I like working with you, and that I think that your ceremony style is it's what I like.
Thank you. Well, the key word that I've always tried to go for, and the key word that I always mention to couples when I sit down and ask them about, what are they looking for and how can my style fit in with that? The word is balance. I try to balance the ceremonies out as much as I can and not have them be too heavily weighted in their story or too heavily weighted in traditions or too heavily weighted in spirituality. It's a really good, I try my best to really maybe sprinkle in everything kind of at an even level so that the ceremonies come out with a little bit of a balanced feel to it.
How is the industry changing? I know we spoke about this a little earlier, and one of the reasons why I'm glad that I'm getting an officiant in the first round is, as a DJ, we're being replaced by iPods. We're just going to have an iPod for the wedding. And in your case, it's having a friend. How is that happening? And I don't want to say in every instance it's a bad decision, but there are some times where it could be a bad decision.
Definitely. And you probably know this a lot more than I do, as in you see so many different scenarios. You've seen the professional officiants, and then you've seen the brother-in-laws. And I know that as a DJ and as an MC, I mean, you can speak firsthand to the disaster that can happen when, your Uncle Joe, who's never done this for the first time, gets up there, forgets to tell the guests to sit down, misses all the important parts of the ceremony, doesn't even say, you may kiss the bride, and then looks over at you and goes, well, So there's so many crazy, weird things that can happen when you have somebody who's never done a wedding before. But yeah, you're right. The industry is changing, and I know that we're hearing a lot more of people going in that direction. Not just to save money, but again, they're looking for maybe that personal touch that they feel that they don't get from a stranger. And so those are the things. That's one of the challenges that I really have to tackle when I sit down and interview couples. That is to express to them the benefit of going with somebody like me. Is that not only are you going to, I'm going to cover all those professional things, and your ceremony is going to come out looking very clean and polished, but at the same time, I'm going to do my very best to try to get to know you guys just as well as maybe one of your close personal friends, so that when we're standing up there, I can have some sort of a relationship with you, and we have a little bit of a history. We spent some time together. We've laughed, we've cried, we've spilled wine on each other. Maybe not, but maybe coffee. But that's really the challenge that I try to convey is, to let couples know, look, I get it. Your brother might be an amazing public speaker and it could turn out great, but here's what I can do. I can offer you it's pretty much the same thing, and then I can back it up with 18 years of experience. And then, some bite and some don't, but that's just the way the industry is going.
And it's funny you mentioned specifically they forgot to tell the guests to take a seat, because I was doing one, and it was one of the photographers that we work with. I can't remember if it was Jenna Joseph or Allie Lindsay, but the officiant did forget to say, you may now be seated, when it came to that point in the ceremony. And I talked to the coordinator. The coordinator even told him at rehearsal, now, if you remember one thing, remember to tell the guest to take the seat. And the photographer's like, I can't get any pictures. So I actually had to kind of make eye contact with someone in the front row and move my hands in a, you guys can go ahead and take your seat fashion. I talked to the officiant afterwards, and he's like, I had one job and I blew it. And I'm like, well, at least you admitted it.
That's great. Yeah, we see that and I did that once. The second wedding that I ever performed, actually, no, it was the third. It was the third wedding I ever performed. And oddly enough, there was a reason, an underlying reason why I forgot to tell the guests to be seated. It was a backyard wedding, and they had this homemade arch that was put into the grass, and the ground was still a little wet and not real solid. And so the spikes that they had built to hold this arch in were not penetrating well, and they weren't holding this arch up very well. And it was a kind of a breezy day. And so literally about 30 seconds into the march, where, the procession, where everybody's walking in, and we're in this backyard, and there's 100 guests, and there's chairs in there, and I'm standing there, and I feel something starting to lean against my back shoulder. Well, the arch is starting to fall over on top of me. And so I literally had to stand there with my shoulder against the arch and hold it up nonchalantly. The couple didn't even know I was doing it. And that's how I performed the entire ceremony.
Wow. The show must go on.
So I did not realize that the guests were still standing, because I was so focused on not letting this arch topple over on top of everyone that I asked for the wedding rings, and then I looked up and I saw that everybody was still standing, and then I went, oh, I'm sorry, y'all can be seated now.
And I was going to ask, when you get to, because there are certain things that where, I may forget to do something, and then I get to a point, I'm like, well, if I announce it now, it will be obvious. I'm just going to let it go. They can just stand for a little while long. It's the first dance. I don't always tell guests to take a seat during the first dance, and so if I don't or something like that, I'm like, we're just going to let this one go.
Yep, sure.
There's so much more to being an officiant than just standing up there and saying I do's. Talk to us about the legal aspect that goes into being an officiant and presiding over a ceremony.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, obviously there's a marriage license involved, and so that's kind of on the responsibility of the couple, and every state follows those rules. You need a license to get legally married, and then once it's filed with the county clerk's office, then you can present that and prove that you're legally married. But there's also the legal side of who can officiate a wedding, and each state is different. Many states have their own kind of rules and guidelines on this. California is actually pretty relaxed. A lot of people will go on to ordainme.com and print out their little certificate. And in California, that is 100% legit and legal. You don't have to pay a cent for it, and anybody can do it. and become an officiant, go on Craigslist, and there you go, and you get started. And hey, I guess more power to you. I mean, I'm all for the gig economy. I'm a huge fan of capitalism at its finest. And if the state of California makes it that easy for somebody to be able to legally officiate a wedding, I guess it's buyer beware at that point, right? So again, this is one of those things where, as an officiant, I have to make sure couples understand. There's legal sides from both ends of it. You've got a legal obligation to obtain a marriage license, and I've got a legal obligation to make sure that I can sign that license in the eyes of the county and in the eyes of the state of California. But there's things. Legislation is constantly changing, as you know. I mean, you blink your eye, and all of a sudden there are new rules and regulations. So who knows what's going to happen in the future? Maybe California will adopt a legislation that says online, because some states do. There are some states that don't allow online officiants to perform wedding ceremonies. So you never know. Maybe California goes that way one day, and then what are all these people going to do? So, it's an interesting topic, but definitely one that should be discussed.
I remember we had a friend officiate our wedding, and he had done many weddings before. So he's another DJ, and he was a DJ that was very instrumental to my growth as a career, but he was also there for the beginning steps of me and my wife's relationship. So when I asked my wife, I'm like, so who do you think should officiate our wedding? She's like, well, isn't Steve doing it? And he was very good, very polished, but in the when he was filling out the license, he put under title officiant. And so we're married, we sign the license, we turn it into the state, we go on to our honeymoon, we come back, we're now in customs, and I pull out my phone, turn it on, and the first voicemail I get is from the state, from the county, saying that your marriage license isn't going to be accepted. So I look at my wife, I'm like, guess what? We're not married. The clerk that I worked with was very helpful, and you can actually, on my marriage license, you can see where he crossed out officiant and put reverend. But he told me that the state would not accept just officiant. And so that was something that kind of stuck with me. And when I do work with a first-time officiant, that's hey, make sure you fill out the paperwork, because I've even started hearing stories where if the signatures cross over lines, that they can be rejected.
Oh, yeah. Filling out the marriage license is one of the most stressful parts of the legal side of it, because the county clerks give every couple this incredible scare talk when they hand over the license, saying no creases, no folds, no bends, no water droplets, no paw prints, nothing like that. Signatures must stay inside the box. If anything loops outside, it's considered a strike through, and the whole thing needs to be redone. And each county, they charge a fee to fix that, to correct that. Some counties, it's as little as $18. Other counties, it's as high as $40 or $50. And they send the license directly to the minister, or to the officiant. So I'll get a license back in my P.O. box with instructions on what was wrong with it and what needed to be fixed. And a lot of times it's something silly like, the maid of honor signed it and her, letter looped out just a little too high and it crossed into something.
What kind of trends are we seeing in ceremonies? What's slipping the way of the dodo, or what's becoming popular or coming back?
So trends that we're seeing in ceremonies, I don't know. I mean, I would say that from my standpoint, I think what I'm seeing a lot more of in wedding ceremonies is people adding in things that are like outside of the box. So people are sort of understanding that, hey, we can kind of make the rules here. We don't have to sit down and follow a strict, specific template from the time I walk down the aisle to the time we kiss and head on out. We're allowed to maybe include our dog as the ring bearer, or we can maybe do like a theme wedding where we dress up as Star Wars characters, or we can have a wedding in a place that maybe would seem a little odd to somebody else. I did a really neat wedding in Joshua Tree National Park, out in the middle of the park underneath a Joshua tree. And they got married on this old antique rug that they had brought to stand on out there. And it was really gorgeous. But, thinking outside the box. And so for me, I like that couples are understanding that, hey, we really can put our own stamp on this, and we can do things and include things in our wedding ceremony to make it unique. And one of the things that I kind of get sad when I hear couples will tell me, they say, well, we interviewed another officiant before you, and he was uncomfortable doing this, or he didn't feel that it was right to do this, or he thought that it would be put offish to our guests if we did X, Y, or Z. And, I've never been that way. I'm the complete opposite. I'm like, hey, as long as it's not illegal, immoral, or unethical, I'm in. Whatever you guys want to do, let's make it fun. Let's make it yours. Let's make it unique. Let's make this a day that you look back on and you don't have any regrets, because nobody wants to look back on their wedding day 5 years, 10 years from now and regret, the way that they did it or the way that they didn't do it because they felt like somebody was telling them, well, that you shouldn't do that, or I wouldn't do that, or probably not right to do that. You're not going to offend anybody anymore. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Or if you are, they're going to get offended by something else that you're going to do. There's just some people that their lot in life is to be offended, and yeah. I kind of take the same pathway. The only rule I have, and I have a very specific reason for it, is that every song I play has to be a radio edit, and it's not that it doesn't matter if there are kids there or anything else. It's the fact that there are guests there that won't know the bride and groom told me it was okay. And yeah. I can't go up to all the waiters at the wait staff because I, like you, am on a lot of preferred vendor lists, and I don't want to getting back to the catering managers that, well, Mike was playing unedited songs. So anything else is on the board. I had a bride ask if I would wear a chicken suit. I said, if you rent a chicken suit, I will wear it. I promise you.
That's awesome.
And a little bit later on, we'll go over some of these experiences that you or I may not have had during a wedding a time or two. How do you work with your couples? So the second they hire you on as an officiant, how does the process go to craft the ceremony for them?
So really all the magic starts right around the 3 to 4 month mark. That's where the beginning stages of the planning start. What I'll do is I'll send them out a few attachments in advance so that they can sort of study up, because the key here is to prepare them for our ceremony details and planning meeting. This is a 90-minute meeting that consists of 2 portions. The first part is my relationship interview. This is where I just dive in and say, bring me back to the beginning. Tell me all about it. How did you guys meet? What were the things that attracted you to each other? What kind of dates did you go on? What sort of trips have you been on? Vacations, travel? Who's your favorite sports team? What's your favorite restaurant? How has life changed over the years? What's a typical Tuesday night for you guys like today? What do you like to do on the weekends now? Have you made any major job changes? Any major geographic changes? And then of course the most important questions are what makes you work, right? What are the keys to the car here? How has your communication evolved over the years? What are some examples of teamwork you can give me to show me how you work together to accomplish a goal or push through a task? How do your personalities balance each other out? Who's the messy one? Who's the neat freak? Who's the early riser and who's the night owl? Who's the one who's the organizer and the planner? Who's the go with the flow in the relationship? And so once I get through that, maybe I might ask them how they got engaged, story of the proposal, things like that. Those are fun. But we spend about an hour just really getting to know them. And that's where I get a chance to kind of really build that relationship. And then the second part of our meeting, we'll spend about 30 minutes going over all the details. So for example, who's the best man and maid of honor? I need to know who's holding the wedding rings, who's in charge of the bouquet, who's going to fluff the dress, who's walking you down the aisle. What about your spiritual background? Where do you guys fall on that temperature scale? You want something a little bit more spiritual, or do you want to keep it maybe light, maybe a little non-spiritual or agnostic? What about wedding colors? That's a big thing I know you notice of me, is I always try to make sure that I blend in with their theme. And so I don't want to show up in a navy suit. If the groom's wearing a navy suit, that would just look awful in photographs. So I always ask, what are the bridesmaids wearing? What color suit are you wearing? And then announcements. How do you guys feel about cell phones and cameras? Do you want me to make any specific announcements about that? Or is this going to be the Wild West and your guests can have a free-for-all with their devices? What are your thoughts on that? What else? I got a detail sheet right here. Who's holding the wedding rings? Are you planning to write your own vows or not? Or do you want to repeat after me? Do we have any pets or any children that need to be recognized in the ceremony? And how would you like to do that? What about unity ceremonies, wine blending, pouring of sand, candles? Do you want to do anything special to recognize parents, roses to the mothers, something like that? First names, that's a big one. You got Jennifers and Jens, Michaels and Mikes, Roberts and Bobs. What do you want me to call you during the ceremony? Is it Bob all the way through, Robert all the way through? Do you want a mix of both? How do you want me to pronounce you at the end? And of course, the big one is, who are your vendors? Who's my team? Who's my DJ? Who's my photographer? Who's the coordinator? Who's the videographer? Who are the key people who need to know what kind of ceremony we have today, where the moving parts are, what's the last thing I'm going to say, and how much time you have for lens changes and things like that. So that's where 90% of all of the work goes into, is that face-to-face 90-minute details meeting where we cover both sides of that detail sheet. And from there, I disappear into the shadows. Bye-bye. And I'll spend the next couple of months putting together the ceremony template. We'll go back and forth via email if there are any last-minute things that need to be taken care of and to be determines that we didn't decide on in our meeting. And then I will see them again at rehearsal.
So so then rehearsal roughly takes about an hour. You're on site. Ceremony usually hour and a half sometimes. And what I'm getting at was there was a well-known wedding coordinator who I'm not going to name names in a meeting once said that officiants had the highest price per capita. Like when you break it down to how much their performance time is versus what they pay, that it was astronomical. But I of course know that most of the work is done before you even set foot on the venue. There's
right.
There's even in your instances, there's writing a ceremony. And there are DJs that will write a script. I'm very much more of an improv kind of guy. I still get most of the information that you get. I just don't write a set script. Yeah. I'm okay in my presentation skills. So if I fumble a word, that it's okay. But it's a little bit different for you. Like I had a ceremony once where the officiant, who was a professional officiant, he just happened to make a mistake. The groom's name was Dane, and he kept switching throughout the ceremony between Dean and Dane. And I'm sitting in the back going, and I may have even told you the story before because it's my favorite. I'm sitting in the back going, did he just call him Dean? No. I'm imagining things. I'm spacing out, paying attention to the musical cues. I'm not getting it. Well, then the maid of honor, who was the bride's daughter, this was a second marriage, goes, and I want to say the best to my mom and Dean. And the second she said that, I died of laughter, and I went up. I'm like, so the officiant was calling him Dean. And when the officiant screws up like that, I'm like, well, as long as I'm wearing pants, I'm fine, because you can't redo the ceremony. And I tell DJs this all the time. You screw up during the ceremony, you might as well go home. You can't get it back. you fumble during the reception, and you've got some wiggle room. But the ceremony, it's everybody's eyes on that moment.
Wow. That's a funny story. I like that. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I tell my couples that I'm going to invest anywhere from 15 to 20 hours total into this wedding. That just, depends on how much we put into it. But, that's the time it takes to do, the communications, scheduling, meetings, drive times, time that it takes to write the ceremony, time spent at your rehearsal, and of course the wedding day. And then there's going to be some follow-up after that. I got to go and file their marriage license and then follow up with the postal service and make sure that the tracking numbers are as they are. And then the follow-up emails to make sure that everything went handy-dandy with, getting their certificates and any questions they have on name changes. So, yeah, there's a lot more than just the 30 minutes you see the officiant.
Yeah. And that's how it is with all of us. I mean, it looks like we work for just a very short amount of time, but there's all the prep work that goes into it. One of the elements that I love of your ceremony, and I remember when I first saw it, we were at I'm pretty sure we were at Lorimar down at the Barrel Room. You had mentioned that they got an email from one of their fur babies, and I can't remember if it was cat or dog in this one particular instance. But I love that. I've been doing this almost 20 years now, and I've seen a lot. That was the first time I'd ever seen that. And you even said, I can't understand what it says, but I think you didn't leave the proper treats or something like that. That was funny. I loved it. The point I'm getting at is, where do you get your inspiration from? Where do you draw from? Because as an MC and an officiant, our roles are very similar, and I know where I get inspiration from, what I look to for influence. Where do you get it from?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe because I'm a fur dad myself. I mean, and I'm just talking about the inspiration, particularly for like the pets and things of that nature. But in my details interview sheet, that's one of the questions that I have on here is that, do you have children or do you have pets? Because I understand, me, I don't have kids, but we've got our dog and we've had her for 10 years and, she's our world. And I can understand people that have pets that maybe don't have kids, and then maybe that pet is a big part of their life. Maybe it's a huge part of their relationship. So I think the first time that I ever did that and recognized a pet in wedding ceremony, and it was before I came up with the email idea, I had just printed out the words woof, 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 woof on a piece of paper. And it was something along the lines of, your baby did pass me a note this morning for you guys to read. And I opened up the note. And then somewhere I got the inspiration to make it into an email and then to make it look like a legit printout. And we'll really go the extra mile here on this one. But, their dog was such a huge part of their story and their relationship. And it was, they did everything together with their dog, and they felt like the dog had brought them really closer together. And the dog was part of the proposal. And it's like, how could you not recognize their dog in the ceremony? And so obviously the inspiration really, I guess I could say, it just comes from the interview. When I sit down with couples and I learn their story, I try to really zero in on, what is it about this story that I can kind of add an extra little highlight and maybe incorporate into their ceremony, so that not only does it add to the personalization, but it also makes sure that they never forget that day and they never forget that moment.
And I guarantee they won't. And not only they won't, but I know from the audience reaction that they won't either. And it's those little moments that I'm kind of trained, because I have a theater background and I understand how it's the small little minute details that are the most important. But they were able to pick up on that, and that's one of the things that I think at least separates you from a lot of other officiants that I work with. The good from the bad. We all know there's the stereotypical FM radio DJ, but there's also the officiant version of him as well, and you're definitely not that.
Well, thank you.
And I know I view weddings are very much a stage performance, and so any performance that I'm at, I will always pick up things from. I've got a line that I'll use from time to time if the crowd is not energetic, that I learned from when I went to go see the Beatles Cirque du Soleil show Love in Vegas. The MC came out and said, "Welcome everybody to Cirque du Soleil Love," and got an okay reaction. And I can't remember the exact phrasing that he said, but I loved it. I'm like, that's great. I can use that. And I mean, I've even ripped off from Jungle Book crews, skippers, tram hosts at Universal Studios, and anywhere I go where someone's presenting in front of someone else, their job is very similar to ours. And, that's what I look forward from. And that's one of the reasons why I think the officiants are my favorite vendors, because I've got that kinship to them, and you never know what you can pick up, from them, what you can learn from them, or how they can turn a phrase and things like that.
Right.
You're also one of the last people to talk to the groom. And what do you say to that groom that's, you can just see in his eyes, he's not nervous about getting married. He knows this is the woman for him. He's nervous about standing up there in front of everybody with all eyes on him. What do you say to him?
Yeah, again, I kind of play it by ear. Each groom is in a different state of mind. You've got some that are just completely confident and, just having a great time. And, these are probably the ones that aren't going to be the criers, but and then, on the other side of the coin, you've got the ones that are visibly nervous. They'll even tell you as you're walking down the aisle that they're nervous, or they're feeling, oh my gosh, this is really happening. So, I just kind of play off each one depending on, what's going on in their in their world at that moment, because it's a big deal, especially, hopefully it's their first wedding, right? I'm married twice, but yeah, I mean, it's a big deal when you're standing there in that moment. It's very surreal. And I always tell couples too, the ceremony goes by fastest for you two. I mean, you're going to blink and this thing is going to be over. That's just what adrenaline does to you. So, at rehearsals, I always tell couples, when you lock eyes for the very first time after, she's given away by dad, and you join hands for that first moment and you get there and you're there, I want you to just let time stand still for just a couple of seconds, look into each other's eyes, and really appreciate the moment and what's happening here, because the wedding day is very chaotic and it's just very easy to lose sight and lose focus on what this moment really means. And couples really appreciate that, when I bring that up at rehearsal, because it's true. It's very easy to just kind of, wow, that just went by and I barely remember about it. So that's one of the things, that I try to remind grooms of too, is, just, hey man, really be in the moment and just be with her, look into her eyes and know that this is your person and you guys are meant to be standing here together.
And in a lot of ways, the ceremony is almost the culmination of the chaos. I mean, not that there's things that crop up, but I've kind of always felt once the ceremony goes off without a hitch, I hold my breath during a ceremony, because I know that moment is precious. And if I'm providing the microphones, that'd be a hell of a time for a mic to cut out or pop or interference like that. And then once you as the officiant have said, now present Mr. and Mrs., and everyone's applauding and the music's hit, I take a deep breath. And now it's like, okay, now we can enjoy the reception. And I envision that way for the couples as well. They're like, whew, okay, now I've done it. And maybe we're stressing our first dance, but it's nothing like being up there with everybody just looking at you.
Well, that's why I love my famous final 4 words to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, the bar is open.
Yep. I love that as well. What are some tips that you can give to the couples to allow, and you've touched on a lot of this already, that you can give them to enjoy the ceremony experience?
Well, again, it all comes back to making sure, again, that they don't let that moment slip away. Again, I can't stress enough. I remember my own wedding day 10 years ago and thinking, wow, that was really fast. And then we watched our wedding video back and the ceremony was almost 20 minutes. And I go, it didn't seem like that. And so, that's the biggest tip that I give to couples, especially when we're sitting down and doing our ceremony details meeting, is that I let them know, look, my job is to take all the heavy lifting off of your plate so that you can really enjoy the day. And that's why you spend the time and the money to hire solid professional vendors. Your DJ, your photographer, your coordinator, your videographer. These are probably people that you did a lot of research on, and you hired them because you were impressed with their professionalism and their track record and what they can give you. But ultimately, what does that all mean for you as the couple? That means that you can shift all of the weight onto their shoulders so that you can truly enjoy the day and not have to worry about anything. Because the last thing you want to do is be worrying about, well, what's my officiant doing, or where's my DJ, or why isn't my photographer, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do that when you spend the time, the energy, the research, and the money to hire, true consummate professionals. So I guess those are the 2 biggest bits of advice that I can give to couples. Make sure that you don't skimp out on those vendors, because they take the heavy lifting away from you so that you can truly enjoy your day. And then just don't let that ceremony pass you by. I mean, it's going to go by quick because of the nerves and the adrenaline. Really try to take a moment to, like I always tell couples, my favorite phrase, let time stand still for a few seconds and really just appreciate what's happening in that moment when you first lock eyes and you first join hands.
And I use it a lot. Like my goal is to allow my couples to be in the moment, because I feel like that's really the only way you can enjoy something is if you're there experiencing it as it's experiencing it. And that's one of the reasons why I like an unplugged ceremony. Like I've got 2 kids and at every function, my wife's always there with her phone and she's watching it through the screen of her phone. And I know she wants those memories, but at the same time, I'm like, look at it through your eyes, experience it live, because it's just not the same looking at it through a small little screen. And the other thing is I appreciate when an officiant's there to make that announcement because, number one, I think you're better equipped to make it as opposed to this disembodied voice from somewhere behind a bush going, turn off your cell phones, please. So cool. Well, thank you very much, David. We are just about finished with that, and now it is time for our Fast Five. These are the 5 questions, the controversial topics that are haunting our industry that need to be settled right now by a professional. Right off the bat, 1,000 years or canon in D?
Canon in D.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Sand ceremony or wine blending?
I'm a big wino, you know that.
Yep, that is absolutely correct as well. This next one could be a little tougher. Wedding singer or wedding crashers?
Ooh, I like Adam Sandler, so I'm gonna go with the wedding singer.
You are 3 for 3. You're on fire there, David. Favorite winery?
My favorite winery? Well, that'd have to be Somerset.
Yeah.
My wife's the manager.
That is exactly also correct. And then the final one is You've Lost That Loving Feeling or Sweet Caroline?
Come on, You've Lost That Love and Feeling.
And that is the time to let listeners in on, I did a wedding once where the bride and groom had certain tasks that she wanted performed so that the guests could get them involved and get them to kiss. And one of them was get someone to sing a song with the word love in it. Well, David and his lovely wife, who I've met, happened to stay for dinner that day. And the second I saw David, I'm like, okay, good. I've got someone in there that if this doesn't go, I've got someone I can look at and immediately grab. And so I grabbed him and we both started singing You've Lost That Love and Feeling. And from then the party got started. And the bride actually even commented on that in our, on my not review, for that, getting that started. So love working with you, David. Once we get back to weddings, I'm going to love working with you more and more. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to humor me and my little questions on my little podcast. I'm going to give you some time now to let the couples know all the services that you offer, also all the places they can find you on Instagram, social media, and all that, and how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, well, great. I appreciate that. So in addition to performing weddings, I also offer a really amazing premarital coaching course. 6 sessions that you can spend with me. We'll really get to know each other at that point. And I've had amazing, great feedback from that. Let's see, what else? I actually am going to probably venture into the world of officiant training at some point. And so if you know of a friend or family member that is going to be performing their first wedding ceremony, I do have a little officiant training course that I'm putting together. It's not completed yet, but it's obviously with COVID-19 now. Figure out some ways to expand my revenue here. So that's another thing that I'm probably going to be putting together as a first-time officiant training course so that you can remember to tell the guests to sit down. But other than that, I've always got open seats up in my Jeep. So anybody who wants to come out and spend a day four-wheeling with us, that's another thing. Totally free if you want to do that. But online social media, Facebook is Your Perfect Ceremony. Instagram is @MinisterDave. Is that the only ones? And nothing on YouTube yet, but maybe someday. Might do that.
Well, there you go. There you have it. Thanks again, David. And really, I'm not saying this just because you're in front of me. You are really one of my favorite officiants, and I look forward to getting to work with you in the future. Thank you for taking some time out and talking to us.
Absolutely, Mike. It's been my pleasure, and I wish you and your beautiful family the best, and stay safe and healthy.
As we wish yours the best as well.
All right, guys.
All right.
Take care.
Once again, thank you so much, David, for taking some time to talk to us. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. David's a really, really good guy, and he's a really great officiant, has really great ways to make your ceremony personal. And it was really great to talk about the inspiration that he comes from. That's one of the things that fascinates me is as a public performer, I take inspiration from everywhere. I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit that I've taken stuff from the Jungle Boat Cruise. I've taken stuff from wrestling. If you want to talk about showbiz and putting on a show, wrestling is one of the best ways. Now, obviously, you've got to rein it in and make sure that it's appropriate, but inspiration is out there all the time, and I am constantly absorbing it, and I love talking to creatives. And where do you get inspiration from? What do you look for? So thank you again for listening to this episode of WedCast. We've got a great show for you coming up next week, and then further on down the road, we're gonna have a lot of fun. I've got a interview lined up with someone who grew up in the wedding industry, and we're going to tell you their story and then talk to you about some of the traditions and how they came about and why we do things a certain way. So once again, if you're listening to us, wherever you're listening to us, give us a thumbs up or leave us a 5-star review, comment, subscribe. That way you always know when we release an episode. You can find us at csquaredradio.com under the WedCast link. Of course, you can also find us on Spotify, iTunes, Podcast Republic. That's the one that I use to listen to my podcast, and we're on there as well. So just search WedCast, subscribe, leave us a rating, and all that fun stuff. And keep an ear out because, we'll be announcing another recording of the Untitled Music Project coming up pretty soon. We just did our quarantine episode, and we had a lot of fun with that as well. So that can be found also at csquaredradio.com under the Untitled Music Project banner. And it's hosted by Mixcloud. So mixcloud.com/csquaredradio is where you will find the Untitled Music Project. Because of copyright laws and restrictions and everything, that Mixcloud's the only place where you'll find that. And the reason is because Mixcloud actually pays the artist. So when I upload the episode, I've got to go through and I've got to timestamp, where this song begins at this moment in the podcast. This song begins at this moment. So they can make sure that every time you listen to it, the artist whose music that I'm using is getting a cut, because those streams are on Facebook and Zoom and Twitch and different things like that. They're getting shut down. That's one of the realities that DJs are facing, is that someone's hard work is represented in that song, and they deserve to get a cut of it. So that's why we love Mixcloud, and that's where we put our Untitled Music Project. So that's it for this episode. Again, if you like us, leave us a review and give us a thumbs up or a 5-star review, subscribe. If you're listening to this on YouTube and you didn't like us, hey, leave that in the comments as well. So until next week, goodbye, everybody.